Okay, welcome to today's event, Politics as a Tool for Freedom and Education as a Commitment for Equality. It's hosted by the Colorado European Union Center of Excellence. Hi, I'm Felicia Naranjo Martinez, Executive Director of the Colorado European Union Center of Excellence at the University of Colorado Boulder. We're also known as CEUCE, and our aim is to foster links between the United States Mountain West and the European Union by promoting mutual understanding and engagement among students, educators, researchers, policymakers, business and legal practitioners, and the general public. So just a couple of items before we get started. Please use the chat function and submit your questions during and after Ms. Rodriguez's talk today. You'll direct your questions to me, to Felicia Martinez, and then I will give those to our speaker at the end of her talk. Just for your knowledge, there's a recording of today's event going to be posted at the CEUCE website. And now it's my pleasure to introduce today's speaker, Liliana Rodriguez. Liliana was a Portuguese member of the European Parliament from 2014 to 2019, representing the Socialist Party. Liliana was a member of the Women's Rights and Gender Equality, the Regional Development Culture, and Education Committees. She was also a member of the Human Rights Subcommittee and Vice President of the Euromed delegation. Her greatest efforts have focused on the idea of equality, using education and the media as allies to promote the objectives of the millennium, along with real community intervention that supports human rights from the bottom up. She's since ceasing to be an MEP, Liliana has returned to the University of Madeira, where she teaches philosophy and critical theories of education. She holds several positions at the university, and in 2020, she was elected scientific coordinator of the education area. Esse ver, Liliana, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for everybody, especially to Felicia, to Shireen, who helped me a lot preparing all of this. And of course, to the people who are listening to me. And I will share my thought with you, if you allowed me. Well, this is my point of view. My title is about my point of view of what it is politics. For me, politics, it's a tool for freedom. That's why I would like to think with you and make a reflection about why or what are we doing with politicians today? With politics, sorry, not politicians, with politics today. And for the other hand, I understand the education as a commitment for equality. And let's try to see what has this to do with gender issues. I chose a sentence from a French philosopher, Eric Fail. He says something like this in a very good book about philosophy and politics. He says, an absolute freedom will be unuseful, less freedom. Sorry, I'm not saying this. Whose very concept is concretely unthinkable. Political awareness seeks progress towards the eliminations of violence. This means that politics should serve in first of all, freedom. And then I choose two sentences. One is not choose, it's my own sentence, but the first one, it's another philosopher, Habermas, about the way I see education as a commitment for equality. He says something like this first. Men make their history, but not with will and conscience. This means that sometimes what we are doing in our context, in our region, in our work, in our day. Sorry? Okay. So I was saying that I choose a sentence from Habermas where he said that men take their history, but not with will and conscience. That means that sometimes we are doing history, but we don't have the conscience of what we are doing. That's why I think that this commitment education as a commitment for equality, should be to the social hegemony and abstract knowledge that accentuated the devaluation of the other. The individual is now in the atrophy of the collective commitment that prevents him from exploring the social order. So why we are sleeping? That's the questions. Why we still are discussing gender issues in 21st century? And recovering the first way, as I see politics as a tool for freedom, it's also a moral actions. It should be. And in the other hand, we should make the reflection about what are we doing with politics, why we need politics. It's just the same in the same. I put politics in the same order as philosophy. If it doesn't make us better, let us leave it alone. That's why I make a reflection about European education objectives. First, I can reduce to two big aims. The first one is the feeling of the belonging, of shared community, of help and responsibility for the others. That's why I was saying before that we should look for the others. The second big aim is to introduce young people to the diverse national and regional religious and ethnic identities in Europe. See that we have made a lot of legislations in Europe about religions, issues, and ethnic identities. But the most important on this is to understand how can the diversity of Europe and these multiple communities to have the comprehension, all of them, of the social design that constitutes the culture, the fundamental culture, European culture. So when I define all the legislation and I resume that to these two big objectives, I was looking for the dimension of gender in education, European education. This is in Portuguese. It's not easy. Oh, sorry. This is in Portuguese. It is a small girl who sits on the big chair, and the gentleman is passing through her and say, "Be careful, princess, you are going to fall." And she answered to him, "I'm not a princess, I am Spider-Man." So we really have to do a big effort to change the way people look to women. And this problem is not only with the old generation, but also with our generation and young generation. For example, in Portugal, the violence between young people, especially at university, couples at university, it has increased a lot. If comparing, for example, with my generation. So what is the diagnosis? Inequality in education is related to income inequality. This image is the image of my first report in the European Parliament. When I arrived in 2014, they gave me this report empowering women and girls through education to be presented in 2015. I have spoke with a lot of people, a lot of associations, a lot of governments, and it was interesting that people think that this problem, it's a women problem. They still think that like this, even to more progressist countries in Europe, they think that this is a lateral problem. It's not a central problem, and it should be for all the governments. The diagnosis about education, training, and gender in European Union. For example, non-employability between 20 and 60 years. You can see it has been, in 2001, it was 18%. Now it's lower, now it's 11.7 higher in women, if the comparison is men, of course. For example, when we look for the unemployment rate in 2021, it was 7.3. And then we still don't have the difference between men and women. But if you look in 2019, the rate of unemployment for women was 7%, and for men it was 6.4 in 2019. This is very strange because women are unemployed, but we have more formation, more degrees than men. For example, university degrees between 30 and 34 years is 43% are belong to women and 34% to men. So we have more formation, higher education, but we are more unemployed also. So let us talk about gender and the employment dimension. In all countries in the European Union, we have more men employed than women. And in particular, women who didn't born in European Union, it's higher than the women who are born in European Union. Sorry. And then you look for gender and policy dimension in the European Union. For example, when you look for the regional representation and gender in European Union, the average is 29%. I'm sorry because the scheme, the table, it's in Portuguese, but it's easy to understand, I suppose. On 297 regional assemblies in the European Union, only 17 are held by women in terms of parity. This study was done in 2018. So the parity with 40%, we have it in Belgium, in Spain, in France, in Sweden, in Finland. And with no women, we have in Hungary, Italy, and Romania. This is from 2018. Without any kind of parity, we have Slovakia. That's why I'm very proud of my country, because my country was one of the first to have the quota law. The quota law, it's not a definitive law. It should be something to be used between something like between 6 and 10 years. And we were expecting that one day we will not need the quota law. But our data says that we will need something like 100 years to achieve parity in political representation between men and women. And then you have a terrible dimension that it is violence against women. In the European Union, 1 in 3 women has suffered some form of physical or sexual violence since the age of 5. So, and we are speaking about rape, mutilation, persecution, beating, or death. 500,000 women in the European Union have been subject to genital mutilation. It is a big problem, for example, in countries like my country, Portugal, because we have a lot of people from some regions of Africa, and there is a cultural, they say it is a culture, but of course it's not, it's a crime in Portugal to put young girls, and in some cases there are babies, they have to be subject to genital mutilation. It's not allowed. But it's interesting to see that the risk in the European Union, it's 118,000 women and the countries are United Kingdom, Italy, Germany, Netherlands, Sweden, and Belgium. Portugal, it's out of this. This dangerous, more clearly this dangerous. But it's also a problem in Portugal, of course. 13 million women suffered from domestic violence over the course of 12 months. 3.7 million women who have experienced sexual violence over 12 months. 1 in 20 women has been a victim of rape since the age of 5. So the data are not very, they don't give us too much hope, but it understands us to see the whole picture. And then when you look to the history of women's body as a weapon, it's terrible. Since 1992, first with Liberia in 1989. Of course, these are not exactly that data that we have, but now we have other countries and groups that are using women's body as a weapon. For example, in Ethiopia, South Sudan, Syria, Russia, Turkey. Now they crash the agreement they have with us, with the European Union, about women's rights. Poland, Hungary, Lebanon, United States of America, it's also on it. Boko Haram and ISIS, sorry. But you have for me one of the most sad things of Europe, that it was the problem in Yugoslavia. 6,000 women were used, their body was used as a weapon in the heart of Europe in the 19th. But we suppose it were much more than 60,000. We suppose it was 1 million. Then you have another dimension of the problem of gender. It's the migration dimension. And there was a very good report about Mary Honeysball, an English MEP, and she was working specifically women migration. And women represent an average on a third of asylum seekers in Europe. And in the Mediterranean, we know that people who were reached to the coast of Europe were something like 38%. In 2016, women and children represents 55% of people who arrived in Greece looking for asylum in the European Union. So there is big risk of being woman in the world, not only in Europe, but in the world. Because I've looked through the data in United States, and they are not also the best ones. I used to say that if one woman is victim of violence, we have terrible data. So there is higher risks involved in the trajectory of refugees and migrant women and girls, and especially girls also, in Greece and Macedonia. You don't imagine, we have in 2070, if I'm not wrong, there were something like 20,000 children who were lost in European soil when they arrived, refugees, young people. It's terrible when you see so many young people that we don't know what happened to them. So then they really need more protection. Now they have more, but in 2016, it was there was a big pressure in all the Europe because of the problem of migration, especially from Syria. And then you have the gender dimension in the world, and how is the world treating women? We have a very good tool to combat violence against women. It is the Istanbul Convention. And it is ironic because we know that something like 10 days ago, Turkey decided to say we will not have a special agreement for combat the violence against women. So they are out now. So this picture, it's also in Portuguese. I'm sorry because it's not possible to change it. But inequality between gender, we have the 5 worst country to be women. It's in Yemen, Niger, Chad, Afghanistan, and Costa do Marfim. And then you have the 5 best country to be a woman: Slovenia, Sweden, Germany, Denmark, and Austria. Then you have the data of United States. It's not the best one also. It's very close to problems as in Europe. It's the same. Some things you have more than some things we have different, but it's nothing special. Difference not special. So that means that we have big problems in the world to change. But the most development countries, if they have this kind of data, I can imagine the unless development countries. For example, on average, nearly 20 people per minute are physically abused by an intimate partner in the United States. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 9 men experience several intimate partner physical violence. 1 in 4 women and 1 in 7 men have been victims of several physical violence, namely beating, burning, strangling. And 1 in 7 women and 1 in 18 men have been stalked by an intimate partner during their lifetime. And it's interesting to see the data about the help that we can have by phone. For example, in the United States, 20,000 phone calls placed to domestic violence are the normal, or are the normal numbers of phone calls in a typical day. The presence of a gun in a domestic violence situations increase the risk of homicide by 500%. In our case, in Europe, usually there is not allowed to have guns at home, especially with the exception of some cases like policemen or lawyers, they can have it, but usually we don't have this kind of problem. Intimate partner violence accounts for 15% of all violent crime. Women between the ages of 18 and 24 are most commonly abused by an intimate partner. 19% of domestic violence involves a weapon. Domestic victimization is correlated with a higher rate of depression and suicidal behavior. This is an interesting issue because I don't have this kind of data in Portugal, not correlated. And it'll be interesting to have, I will look for this to work more on these issues, the correlation between domestic victimization, and the rate of depression and suicidal behavior. Only 34% of people are injured by an intimate partner receive medical care for their injuries. I usually say that the words are heavy, they have weight, and people should be careful for what they say. Even when we are on the street, we should not be injured because we are women, because we are dressed like this or dressed like that, and we still have that kind of comments out of our home. So I like to say this because really words have weight. Then in 2018, we have the global gender gap. It was a comparison between 149 countries. And they use a scale from 0 to 1, with 0 representing the disparity and 1 representing the parity. It's interesting to see the results. They decide to look for 4 areas. It was economic participation and opportunity, education, health, and political empowerment. For me, it was missing something very important on this report. It was the conditions of the commercial treaties between the countries, but they didn't put it. It was, for some reason, they didn't have that kind of area to be analyzed. The Global Gender Difference Index was first introduced by the World Economic Forum in 2006. And the main objective is to capture the magnitude of gender-based disparities and track their progress over time. These rankings are designed to create a global awareness of the challenge posed by gender disparities. So the main conclusion in 2018, the main conclusions of the report was that equality was something like 6-8%. But that means what? That we have 32% average difference between the sex. The greatest gender gap, it is in political empowerment, and it's very easy to say because the difference is 70.1%. In the 149 countries assessed, there are only 17 that currently have women as head of states, and only 18 ministers in the world are women. Women hold only 34% of management and administrative positions in the countries where the data are available, and less than 7% in the worst performing countries. And we are not surprised, it was Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Pakistan. However, full parity with regard to the political economic leadership is already a reality in 5 countries. You have here the countries: Bahamas, Colombia, Jamaica, Laos People, Democratic Republic, and Philippines. Women spend on average twice as much time on housework and other underpaid activities as men. So what are the future prospects? What they give to us in 2018? They're projecting current trends into the future. The gender gap will be closed in 180 years. in the 160 countries covered since the first edition of the report. The indicator on economic and political empowerment is the biggest challenge, and it will take 202 years and 107 years in particular to finish. And it's easy to say this because you look even in Europe and other countries, you don't have so many women as we should. In Portugal, we decide that in the local elections, we use the quotas law, and in the past it was something terrible that it was happening. You have 2 men and 1 woman, imagine a woman, and then if they won the elections, what have they done? They've put out the woman. This is what's happening several times in municipalities and at the local power. And then 2 years ago, our government, the central government of Portugal, they decide if you want to replace a woman, somebody, like if it is a woman, you have to replace for another woman, not by a man. And in the past, when they have to replace, they replace by men. Now that it's not possible at the local elections. What we call it municipality elections. Oh, sorry, I passed one. As I am Portuguese, I was looking for my country, and we are in 37th position in the ranking of gender equality in the world. You have here some countries. Iceland is the first one. Norway is the second. I would like to look for a country. For me, it was a very big surprise in 2018. It was Rwanda. Rwanda was in 6th place. Then you have the worst like Iraq, Pakistan, and Yemen. So Portugal is not so bad, but I was expecting much more. And then you have the difference areas where they were looking for. For example, in education, Portugal, if you can see, is 82 place. And health, now we are now very, very, very worried with health. It was very strange because they put Syria on first. Of course, this is not possible. The data could not be right on this case. So what about the gender issues? I used to say that it's not my problem. It's not exclusive my problem. It's not your problems. It's not their problems. It's our problem, the gender issues. Of course, there is a visible effort in the 4th pillar of European Union about to reduce the disparities between men and women and inequalities. But inequality, it's much more. For me, I really believe that inequality are very related with, as I say in the beginning, with the income inequalities. Women there is a big gap for salaries, for example. We still are earning less money than men for the same position. For example, in my country, we earn less, 70%. The average in Europe is something like 15% in 2019. And the positive results in mainstreaming gender equality and women's empowerment in the core of European Union institutions, member states, and external relations and cooperation programs. They are visible, in fact. But in 2018, I was working in the gap two, and for me, it was clear that we have a lot of data, we have a lot of numbers, but we have so many things to analyze in the qualitative point of view. Of course, we need the data. Of course, we need to understand the problem if we have concrete data, but concrete data doesn't mean to have exclusively the numbers. We need much more than that. So what was my reflection at that time? My reflection was, of course, it is important to know if the proposed activities are implemented, but it's even more important that we know in a rigorous and a reasonable way if they are producing the effects that we want, if there are results. whether we are going to the right direction or if we need to change the strategies. Not forgetting that these strategies will have to take into account the different contexts and priorities for each country or region. For example, my country is considered one of the most progressive countries in promoting gender equality. But for example, my region, it's one of the worst, have the worst results in Portugal. And it's a very small region. So we have to change strategies when we are in different regions, even inside the same country. So what are the difference between Gender Action Plan 2 that I've worked and the new Gender Action Plan 3 that will be used between 2021 and 2025? In Gender Action Plan 2, we have four areas to work, and this one we have in Gender Action Plan 3, we have 5 objectives. There is an objective that for me is not very clear. It is the first, when they say leading by example. For me, it's very empty goal, because when they say leading by example, what example? Because you can look for different countries in Europe. For example, look for Hungary. Do I want to be leading by example by Hungary or by Poland? For me, this is very empty goal. I was expecting much more for Gender Action Plan 3. It doesn't change very much from Gender Plan 2 in some kind of things. For example, if you look for the number 2 objective of Gender Plan 3, I'm sorry, when they say shared strategic vision and close cooperation with member states. What is this? We are sharing strategic visions since Gender Action Plan 1. So something is not okay, because as I told you, of course I have hope, and of course I expect a lot of things from European Union. I used to say that people look at us as an example, look at us with hope, but we are speaking about this since 2014. Why we cannot do better than this? Why? For example, if you look for Gender Action Plan 2, it disappears the gender dimension in all the commercial agreements. Why? Why does it disappear on the aims of Gender Action Plan 3? It means that they are not looking for it between 2021 and 2025. I don't know. So my reflections are this: numbers and statistics will only be useful if they show a concrete improvement in people's life. We are much better, for sure. We are much better, but we still have a long way to run. The concept of gender equality is often understood in a very general and abstract way, and we should avoid that when we are speaking about gender equality, because people think gender equality, oh yeah, it will be nice to have the same rights as men. Well, it's much more than that. It's much more. It's a question of identity. It's a question of being recognized. Sorry. So I was responsible for this report in 2018 about the goals, and I've made the comparison between what we want and what we have. And we still need to achieve some things. First, mainstream gender in all sectors of policy dialogues. It disappeared, as I told you, from the concrete agreements, commercial agreements between countries between Europe, between European Union, but also with third countries. I really think that we need a policy research and a robust evidence to build knowledge on gender equality and women's empowerment. We should have zero tolerance policy regarding case of sexual or gender-based harassment. It is mandatory to have gender analysis for all external actions undertaken. I know that some agencies are doing that in Fort, but it should be mandatory to have that kind of data. We should have, and we have this kind of regular dialogue and coordination of civil society organizations and other stakeholders in human rights, health, the environment. This kind of dialogue, I must say, that we really have in the European Union. And we should have regular data collection on violence against women and girls to develop country-specific recommendations. That should be the aim. I really believe that we all should defend the respect for an access to sexual and reproductive health and rights, and to defend the consensus on development. If we have equality, we will have better development. Also believe that we should call for a mechanism to set up expressly for the purpose of monitoring and strengthening gender policy under trade agreements. This should be very clear for everybody inside European Union and outside European Union, and should have the obligation under the trades to apply gender mainstream in all European Union activities, including political dialogues and across all sectorial policy dialogues in areas as energy, agriculture, transport, education, public administration, and so forth. And to finish, I hope I didn't take too much your time. I bring you a lot of data. Maybe you know all of them, but I think if you have data, I really believe that we can make a better job. And as a researcher, but also as a human being, I think that we all should be an ambassador for gender equality. Thank you so much.